They say those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. But what happens when the people making history are the ones making catastrophic mistakes? From million-dollar miscalculations to operations that backfired spectacularly, the U.S. government has had its share of moments that cost taxpayers billions, created unintended consequences, and left historians analyzing what went wrong. These aren't just small errors, these are documented failures that changed the course of history. Today we're examining 36 of the most significant government missteps based on official records, declassified documents, and historical consensus. Let's dive into the lessons history tried to teach us. Number 1. The COVID-19 pandemic response. In early 2020, a new coronavirus spread quickly and caused a major health crisis in the United States. Even though early warnings were given, the government had trouble working together. The first CDC test kits didn't work properly, which delayed testing. States had to compete with each other and with the federal government to get medical supplies. Health advice kept changing as scientists learned more about the virus, which caused confusion. Different states used different rules and strategies to handle the outbreak. Outcome: more than 1 million Americans died, the economy suffered, and many people lost jobs and trust in the system. Lesson: the U.S. learned that fighting a fast-moving health crisis needs a clear national plan, good communication, and strong teamwork between all levels of government. But if you think that's complex, wait until you hear about this financial disaster. Number 2. The 2008 financial crisis regulatory oversight failure. In the early 2000s, there were warning signs in the U.S. financial system. Banks gave too many risky home loans, called subprime mortgages, and created complex financial products called derivatives. Credit rating agencies gave these risky investments high ratings. Although federal regulators had the power to control these problems, they did not act strongly or consistently. When Lehman Brothers went bankrupt in September 2008, it caused a global financial crisis. About 9 million Americans lost their homes, 8 million lost their jobs, and many people's retirement savings dropped sharply. The government spent $700 billion to help big financial institutions recover, but many families continued to struggle for years. Outcome: it became the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. Lesson: if financial rules and oversight don't keep up with new and risky financial practices, the whole economy can suffer. Number 3. The Iraq War. Mission Accomplished Declaration. On May 1, 2003, President George W. Bush landed on the USS Abraham Lincoln under a banner that said "Mission Accomplished." He announced that major fighting in Iraq was over after 6 weeks of war. The moment looked like a clear victory, but in reality, the conflict was far from finished. Soon after, violence and insurgent attacks increased, and deep divisions within Iraq grew worse. U.S. and coalition troops stayed in combat for nearly 9 more years, and thousands more soldiers and civilians were killed. Outcome: the event became a famous example of celebrating victory too soon. Lesson: in complex wars, it's dangerous to declare success based only on short-term military wins when the country's situation is still unstable. But wait, there's another response failure that shocked the nation. Number 4. Hurricane Maria response in Puerto Rico. In September 2017, Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico as a powerful Category 4 storm. The island's power grid was almost completely destroyed, leaving 3 million Americans without electricity, clean water, or basic supplies. The federal response faced big challenges. Supplies piled up at ports because distribution was slow and unorganized. Some areas didn't get power back for nearly 11 months. The longest blackout in U.S. history. The government first reported only 64 deaths. But later studies found that nearly 3,000 people likely died due to the storm and its aftermath. FEMA was also busy handling other disasters at the same time, which slowed the response even more. Outcome: Puerto Rico faced a major humanitarian crisis, and long-term hardship. Lesson: island territories need special disaster plans that consider their location and weak infrastructure, something that was missing during Hurricane Maria. Number 5. The Prey. Afghanistan withdrawal execution. In August 2021, the United States ended its 20-year military mission in Afghanistan. The plan was for a calm and organized withdrawal, but things fell apart quickly. The Afghan government collapsed much faster than U.S. intelligence expected, and the Taliban took control of the country within days. Kabul's airport became the only way out, and thousands of Afghans crowded there trying to escape. A suicide bombing by ISIS-K killed 13 U.S. troops and about 170 Afghan civilians. Many Afghan allies and U.S. citizens were unable to reach the airport, and large amounts of U.S. military equipment were left behind. Outcome: America's longest war ended in chaos, leading to serious questions about planning and intelligence. Lesson: ending a military mission requires careful backup, plans for sudden changes in security, something that was not fully prepared for in this case. Number 6. The Flint water crisis. In April 2014, Flint, Michigan changed its water source from Detroit's system to the Flint River to save money. But officials didn't use corrosion control treatment, which protects pipes from rust and lead. The river water was more corrosive, and it caused lead to leak from old pipes into the drinking water. Residents quickly noticed the water looked, smelled, and tasted bad. Children developed rashes, but officials said the water was safe. Later, tests showed high lead levels, and some reports were even changed to hide the problem. For about 18 months, the issue was ignored before the truth came out. Outcome: thousands of children were exposed to lead, which can cause lifelong health problems. Several officials were charged, and the community lost trust in the government. Lesson: cutting costs in public health systems can lead to serious, long-term harm that is far worse than the money saved. Number 7. The Dust Bowl delayed response. In the 1930s, farmers on the Great Plains had removed native grasses to grow more crops. When a long drought hit, the dry soil was easily blown away by strong winds. Huge dust storms, called black blizzards, spread across the country. Some even reached Washington, D.C. and New York. Farms failed. Families were forced to leave their land, and many people suffered from breathing problems caused by the dust. At first, the government under President Hoover did little to help. When Franklin D. Roosevelt became president in 1933, he created new programs like the Soil Conservation Service to fix the problem. But the late response meant many had already lost everything. Outcome: the Dust Bowl became a major environmental and economic disaster that displaced hundreds of thousands of people. Lesson: acting too slowly during an environmental crisis allows damage to grow much worse, making recovery harder and more costly. Number 8. The CIA's MKUltra program. From 1953 to 1973, the CIA ran a secret program called MKUltra to study mind control and interrogation methods. The agency gave people drugs like LSD, often without their knowledge or permission. Many of the test subjects were prisoners, mental patients, or even CIA employees who didn't know they were being experimented on. Some people suffered serious and lasting mental health problems as a result. In the 1970s, when Congress started investigating, the CIA destroyed most of the program's records. Still, investigations by the Church Committee and Rockefeller Commission found enough evidence to prove what had happened. Outcome: MKUltra revealed serious violations of human rights and research ethics, leading to public outrage and several lawsuits. Lesson: the program showed that even in the name of national security, secret research must never cross ethical boundaries or ignore informed consent. Number 9. The Gulf of Tonkin Incident Intelligence Issues. In August 1964, The U.S. government said that North Vietnamese boats had attacked American ships in the Gulf of Tonkin twice. President Lyndon B. Johnson told the public about the attacks, and Congress quickly passed the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, allowing the U.S. to use military force in Vietnam without an official declaration of war. This decision led to a major escalation of the Vietnam War, which cost the lives of 58,000 Americans and millions of Vietnamese. Years later, declassified documents showed that the second attack probably never happened. Bad weather, faulty equipment, and lack of evidence all suggested that reports were mistaken or misinterpreted. Outcome: the U.S. entered a long and deadly war, partly because of an incident that was misunderstood. Lesson: governments must carefully verify intelligence before using it to justify major military actions, since false or uncertain information can lead to devastating consequences. And you won't believe this financial situation. Number 10. The 2008 financial institution bailouts. In September 2008, big U.S. financial institutions were close to collapsing because of risky mortgage investments. The government feared that if they failed, the whole economy would crash. Congress approved the Troubled Asset Relief Program, TARP, giving $700 billion to help stabilize the financial system. The banks and companies that received this money eventually recovered, but many of their executives kept their high salaries and jobs. At the same time, around 9 million families lost their homes, unemployment rose to 10%, small businesses shut down, and people's retirement savings dropped sharply. The large financial firms that were bailed out even grew bigger after the crisis. Outcome: the economy's recovery was uneven. Big institutions recovered quickly, while many ordinary Americans suffered for years. Lesson: when rescue programs mainly help large institutions, it raises the question of whether enough support reaches the people most hurt by the crisis. Number 11. The F-35 Joint Strike Fighter Program costs. The F-35 program started in 2001 with the goal of building one advanced fighter jet that all U.S. military branches could use, saving money by sharing design and parts. The original budget was about $233 billion. But as development went on, engineers faced many problems: complex software, helmet display issues, and engine performance fixes. These delays and redesigns caused huge cost overruns. Today, the program's total cost has grown to over $1.7 trillion, making it the most expensive weapons system ever. Deliveries were delayed for years, and some international partners even cut back their orders. The jets are now in service and perform well, but they took far longer and cost far more than planned. Outcome: the F-35 is a capable aircraft, but its development became a major example of poor cost and project management. Lesson: when creating one high-tech system for many users, early cost and time estimates are often too optimistic and can grow far beyond expectations. You think that's expensive? Wait. Number 12. The Space Shuttle Columbia disaster. On February 1, 2003, Space Shuttle Columbia was returning to Earth after a 16-day mission. During launch, a piece of foam insulation had broken off the fuel tank and hit the shuttle's left wing at high speed. Some engineers worried the wing might be damaged and asked for satellite images to check, but NASA managers denied the request, believing foam couldn't cause serious harm. They were mistaken. The impact had created a hole. When Columbia re-entered the atmosphere, superheated gas entered through the damaged wing, causing the shuttle to break apart over Texas. All 7 astronauts were killed. An investigation found that NASA's culture of ignoring safety, concerns, and repeating past mistakes, similar to what happened in the Challenger disaster, played a major role. Outcome: a second preventable space shuttle tragedy that exposed deep organizational problems at NASA. Lesson: ignoring engineers' warnings and relying on assumptions instead of evidence can lead to catastrophic failure. Real safety requires cultural change, not just technical fixes. Number 13. The Y2K computer remediation costs. In the late 1990s, many computers used only 2 digits to record years, like 99 for 1999. People worried that when the year 2000 came, computers would read RO as 1900 and crash or cause major errors. Governments and businesses around the world spent between $100 billion and $300 billion to fix and update computer systems. Some people even prepared for possible disasters by storing food and supplies. When midnight arrived on December 31, 1999, almost nothing went wrong. Only small glitches were reported. This led to debate. Did the huge effort prevent a real disaster, or was the risk exaggerated from the start? Outcome: the Y2K scare became the most expensive preventative tech project in history, with uncertainty about whether all the spending was truly necessary. Lesson: when prevention works, it's hard to know if the danger was real or simply avoided. Success makes the risk impossible to measure. But this next policy had darker consequences. Number 14. The Bonus Army Dispersal. In the summer of 1932, during the Great Depression, thousands of World War I veterans marched to Washington, D.C., asking for early payment of the bonuses they had been promised for their service, which were not due until 1945. Around 43,000 people, including families, set up peaceful camps near the Capitol. When the Senate rejected their request, most veterans went home, but about 10,000 stayed. President Herbert Hoover ordered the military to remove them. Army Chief of Staff Douglas MacArthur led troops with tanks, tear gas, and cavalry to clear the camps. Violence broke out, and one baby died from gas exposure. The camps were destroyed, and shocking images of soldiers attacking veterans spread across the country. Outcome: the event became a major public relations disaster and badly hurt Hoover's chances for re-election. Lesson: using military force against peaceful protesters, especially veterans, raises serious ethical issues and can deeply damage public trust in the government. Number 15. Japanese-American internment. After Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in December 1941, the U.S. entered World War II. 2 months later, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, which allowed the military to remove people from certain areas. About 120,000 Japanese Americans, most of them U.S. citizens, were forced to leave their homes on the West Coast. Families had only a few days to sell their houses and businesses, often losing nearly everything. They were sent to camps, surrounded by barbed wire and guards, even though there was no evidence they had done anything wrong. German and Italian Americans were not treated the same way. After the war, detainees were released, but the damage was lasting. In 1988, the U.S. government formally apologized and gave reparations to survivors. Outcome: the internment was a major violation of constitutional rights and civil liberties. Lesson: when fear and prejudice guide government decisions instead of evidence and justice, it can lead to serious and lasting injustice. Number 16. The EPA Gold King Mine Spill. On August 5, 2015, an EPA team was inspecting the abandoned Gold King mine in Colorado to address old pollution problems. While trying to check the mine's contents, workers accidentally broke a debris barrier. This caused about 3 million gallons of toxic wastewater to gush out into Cement Creek and then the Animas River. The water turned bright orange as it carried heavy metals through Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah. Towns had to shut off drinking water systems, stop irrigation, and deal with harm to fish and wildlife. The EPA was criticized for not warning communities quickly enough. Ironically, the agency meant to protect the environment ended up causing a major environmental disaster. Outcome: the spill led to years of cleanup work, legal battles, and damage to the EPA's reputation. Lesson: even cleanup efforts must have strict safety measures, because one mistake can cause as much harm as the pollution being fixed. This next policy failure had century-long consequences. Number 17. The end of Reconstruction. After the Civil War, Reconstruction, 1865 to 1877, was meant to rebuild the South and protect the rights of formerly enslaved people. With federal troops enforcing laws, African Americans were able to vote, own property, and even serve in government. But in 1877, the compromise that ended a disputed presidential election led to the withdrawal of federal troops from the South. Once the troops left, Southern leaders quickly passed Jim Crow laws that enforced segregation and took away black citizens' voting rights through poll taxes, literacy tests, and threats. Racial violence rose sharply, and the federal government did little to stop it. Outcome: Reconstruction's progress collapsed, leading to almost 100 years of segregation and discrimination until the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s. Lesson: when federal protections are removed too soon, progress toward equality can quickly disappear, showing that true justice needs lasting institutional support. Number 18. The Indian boarding school system. From the 1870s to the 1960s, the U.S. government ran boarding schools for Native American children with the goal of forcing them to adopt white culture. Officials at the time called it "kill the Indian, save the man." Many children were taken from their families and sent far from home. At these schools, they were punished for speaking their own languages, wearing traditional clothing, or practicing their culture. Their hair, important in many tribes, was cut short. Many children faced abuse, poor living conditions, and disease. Thousands died and were buried in unmarked graves, many of which are only now being found. Outcome: the system caused lasting harm, destroying cultural traditions and creating deep trauma that still affects Native communities today. Lesson: forcing cultural assimilation is a violation of human rights, and the damage it causes cannot be undone, even when apologies come many years later. What you've just witnessed is only the opening act of America's most astonishing missteps. From bold ambitions to calamities of oversight, these first 18 blunders set the stage for a deeper unraveling. But the story doesn't end here. The worst is yet to come. In Part 2, we'll dive into the next 18 failures, where decisions weren't just bad. They were catastrophic. So hit like, subscribe, and ring that bell, because the coming chapter will challenge everything you thought you knew about failure in power. See you in Part 2, where legacy meets disaster head-on.